Thank you very much. I want to thank the organizers, my esteemed colleagues, and my dear student friends. And I also especially thank Sharda, who invited me here. And she and her friends did an extraordinary job and in organizing this conference. I'll just say a couple of things. I mean, the title I thought is absolutely brilliant. Look, as much as we think that English is a colonial language that we have inherited, but as of today, I think we need to explore whether it has that space for social, political, and emotional emancipation. That's what we aim to do. As student of humanities, we make this fine distinction between concept and reality. Life is a concept, but how you live your life is a reality. And I think this conference will allow us to explore that idea. It's not like there's nothing personal about it. It's an intellectual exploration, and its effects will be felt somewhere deep within our subconscious mind, and I think ultimately it will reflect on how we live our life too. Look, the important thing with the students of engineering and sciences is they don't really make the distinction. Somewhere reality is an obvious thing. The laws of motion are the laws of motion, or the laws of gravitation are the laws of gravitation. But as student of language and literature and culture, we don't go by that simple equation. We want to reflect on what these things mean. So once again, I want to really thank the organizers and the absolutely sweet and warm students who have done such a great job in making us feel at home here. Thank you very much. But however, this is what I think, that ultimately creative writing or creative art or writing, you can only be a writer or you can only be creative because it gives you joy. You cannot be creative for social reasons, for political reasons. Just as you cannot give birth to a baby and tell this is a political baby. You have to do it because the baby will fill your heart with love or affection or whatever. There are no two ways of looking at it. This is my view of it. And other thing is, you can be committed to the truth. All artists are committed to the truth. Women writers, male writers, whoever have embarked on writing with some sense of commitment. Truth is important, but the truth as you see it, relative to your own time and space. This is what I always think, and my favorite example is always someone like Shakespeare, for example, who wrote some of the greatest works in literary history of any language. He lived under an extremely repressive era, and he responded to that repression as a creative artist. Had he lived 50 years or 100 years earlier in the medieval world, or 50 years later in the age of restoration, he would not be Shakespeare. In that sense, all writers, all creative artists merely belong to their times. They are not beyond their times. Likewise, there is no absolute truth, as far as writing is concerned. It will be relative, which is why my favorite word is always ambivalence, And for no particular reason, don't take it personally, but I just don't think these laws, these stringent laws which are supposed to make such a big difference, will really make such a big difference as far as the real rights of women are concerned. It may put fear in men who occupy certain social positions, but those who are weak, exploited, and downtrodden, the law means nothing to them. It's just an instrument of violence. That's all it is. We have to educate the masses, give them that space for articulation, and make it for them to speak for themselves. You see? That's what we have to do with minorities. That's what we have to do with weaker sections. That's what we have to do with women, as just pointed out, you see, by Professor Jayaprada and by Volga herself. You see. That space for women's articulation has to be empowered. You see. But however, I mean, my original point remains, you see, that all creative art will contain that seed of pleasure, and that pleasure is almost an erotic kind of pleasure. It appeals to your senses, it appeals to your sensibility, it appeals to your sensuality. That's why it's creative. It wouldn't be any other way. So a poet, for example, a great poet, a poet like Pasolini or Nazim Hikmet, both were communist poets. I mean, one died a violent death and other spent almost a decade in prison. But they're great poets before they're political poets. Their poetry is political, but they are great poets. That's what creative art will always mean. It will have that autonomy, that space for individual contemplation, for self-reflection, for you to be yourself. So even if you were to write a line, somewhere it should be a creation or a reflection of who you are or what you are. It may sound simplistic, but I'm convinced that this is the way it ought to be. Thank you.